Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Frick Programming. Today, we're going to go over error types and roughly how to fix them. So, let's get right into our topics for tonight. So, our topics include compile errors, runtime errors, and logical errors. Now, there is a difference between every single one of these, and depending on what error you have, depends on how we want to fix it. There's a fix to each one. Code may be affected differently depending on what type of error you have, so let's just go right in. First off, we're going to talk about compile errors. Now, compile errors usually means that there's an error in your compiling step. Now, if you have a compile error, that means that you can't compile. Code will not run at all because you can't compile. It can't go down into its little ones and zeros that it needs to go down into to be read by the computer to perform actions. Now, it doesn't really go down into ones and zeros, but let's just say it does. Now, this should be your top priority fix. Continuing on, we're going to go over runtime errors. Now, runtime errors are errors that occur during the program's life, meaning that you're not going to see this typically when you're coding. You'll see this once you start testing your program, when you start running the program, or if you start going through quality assurance. People are going to try to break your code in any way possible. And that's where these runtime errors are going to come into play. Now, your code will run, and it will die when it hits this runtime error. It should die when it hits this runtime error. There are times in which you want to catch errors and say, let's ignore it. And we'll go over that at a later date, but currently we're just trying to go over on what the different types of errors are and how to go about fixing them. And there's really no IntelliSense to show you how the error occurred. You'll get an error code, you'll get a crash code, basically telling you what kind of crash it was, and roughly where, usually it's pinpoint accuracy, but sometimes if many things are running on different threads, it could be a little bit confusing. Just what caused the crash. And then last but not least, let's go over logical errors. Now, these are errors that logically don't align, and these errors depend on the logic of your code. If you're programming something that should logically make sense, then you should not have a logical error. Now, these severely depend on your logic of the code. If let's say, you're programming human actions, and currently you're in sleep mode. Your body is asleep, you're laying in bed, you're asleep. Your code should not perform, poop yourself. Shouldn't happen. That is a logical error. You shouldn't logically poop yourself while you were sleeping. Now, I know that can be a little bit confusing, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth in our coding section. And with that, let's head on over to our coding session. So we're here at the coding session. I've already built 3 programs out for you guys. One of the programs has compile errors, another one has runtime errors, and the last one has logic errors. Now, this compile error program that you see right here, it doesn't actually show you through IntelliSense that there is an error. And if I hit play, it's actually running a different program. It's not running this program. It's not running compile errors.java. And why is that? Well, you can't really tell, can you? Currently, since there's no IntelliSense, you can't tell that this has a compile error. But the reason why I can hit play and it'll run something else is because in the project over here, all these files have their own main method, and so it just defaults to the last ran main method. So if I go out and open up another one, like we had last time with the console output, and I run the console output, and then I head back to the compile errors. If I hit run again, it'll just rerun the console output because this one's not going to run. So what's the error? Well, if you saw when I opened up console output, in the main method, the keywords to it, or really the structure of the main method, is a public static void method. If I go back to compile errors, I have a public void method, which means I'm missing static. And so if I just add static in and hit save, this should run just fine. It's hello there, which is all this program is doing. Now, another one that I can show you that will actually come up with IntelliSense is if I get rid of TLN of system.out.print and hit save. I get an error. Now you can see this in Eclipse because you could definitely see the red squiggly under PRIN. It means there is an error. And if we go over to the light bulb, it says change to print LE, add a catch to system.out, or rename in the file. These are suggestions on what you should do, and IntelliSense basically suggests what it thinks is the right thing, or thinks what's the probable thing to go here, based off of many different types of situations that get programmed into IntelliSense. All we have to do is just change it to one of the suggestions. Now, those suggestions may not always be correct. You may have to do additional things. Robots aren't always going to be as ambiguously thinking as human beings. So that could be completely incorrect, and you would have to interject your own code in, other than what it suggests. But since we fixed it, we can now run this program, and it's going to print hello there. That's really how you go about fixing compile errors. You go look into the code, and you go and see, why isn't my code running? What is stopping it from compiling and running? And you go and fix that situation. Another big one that you'll see in Java is if I get rid of my semicolon at the end of the sentence, or end of the statement in this case, I get another red squiggly. And if I go over to the red X, it will tell you syntax error. You have insert a semicolon to complete the block statement. And it's usually your syntax errors are going to be what causes you to fail. We'll go over a lot more syntax and compilation errors when we start talking about inheritance and polymorphism, because at that point you can get a lot of syntactual based things that will technically should run, but they don't compile. It doesn't understand. There's going to be things that you would believe your code to understand and have access to, which it doesn't. But we'll save that for a later date. So if I just save this and run, it'll run. Next up, we're going to go over to our runtime errors.java. Now, if you just take a look at this code, you'll automatically, or you should, understand exactly what's going to occur. So what we have here is we're going to print out 1 divided by 0. And if you have any sense of math in you, you know that I can't divide something into 0 things. I can't take something and break it into nothingness. So we're going to get new. This is the typical error that you'll see on any calculator if you try dividing into 0. So if I hit play, you'll see an exception in the thread main, which is our main item that is currently running. It tells you what thread caused the error. This will come once you start multi-threading, once we get to that. But that is a very, very advanced topic for a later time. And it says what type of error it is. In this case, it's a java.lang arithmetic exception error, which means we divided by 0. And basically all we have to do is go in here and change this to be something more logical and something that could actually run. So I changed that 0 to 1. And it will run. I don't run into any more errors. So typically your runtime errors would be the main exceptions that you'll see. Because you'll see null pointer exception errors, index out of bounds errors. You'll see a lot of different errors once we start going into the data structures of programming languages. So you'll see that when we get there. Now let's go over to the last one, which is your logical errors. Now, say that I'm writing a program and I want my program to go over the times of the day. The times of the day are morning, afternoon, and evening. Well, and I want it to print in order. But if you look at the code, if we were to run this, what would we get? Well, let's find out. First, we get afternoon, and then we get morning. That doesn't really seem to be the logical way of going about it. I've never heard of a time in which afternoon came before morning, unless I accidentally said good afternoon. Oh wait, it's morning time. Good morning. But that's human error. Robots shouldn't be as erroneous as humans. So we need to fix this. This logically doesn't make sense. Morning should come before afternoon. So what we need to do is we need to take line 7 and make it line 6. So when we run this, it's now morning and then afternoon. This logically makes sense with the time of day, unless, we go into Bizarro's planner. I don't know if Bizarro's planet actually has night, afternoon, and morning. I think in any situation at that point, whatever day cycle you're on, if night is morning, then that would be the morning on that planet. But anyway, back to this. So we have really fixed this. Some other logical errors, like I was speaking of, if you were creating a human in code and your human is currently sleeping, you do not want your human to poop themselves. So we wouldn't have the method poop in a method of sleep. I haven't witnessed a human poop in their sleep, but then again, there are a lot of things that I have yet to experience in life. It may occur. It doesn't sound logical to occur though. And with that concludes this video. Hopefully you guys have learned a thing or two about what is a compile error, a runtime error, and what is a logical error. And hopefully you guys have a full understanding that you should not poop while you sleep. Thank you very much, and I'll see you guys next time.